Instagram stories allow you to engage with the fan base on such a personal level. It adds that extra layer of content for them to interact with. But what can you even post? Let's talk about that. 500 million people use Instagram stories every single day. Not only is it another form of content for your fan base to interact with, but it also means that when people go to your Instagram account, they see that it's an active account, so they're more likely to follow. Instagram stories have come initially from Snapchat. They took that idea because it was so popular on there. And now it's such a popular feature on the Instagram app. Far too many artists are posting with the aim to get sales, to get streams, and the main idea for Instagram is to actually interact with an audience. So stories should be used for that. As a feature, they're there for spontaneous content. They're there for raw, authentic content. And Facebook actually recently did a study on why people view Instagram stories. And 61% of people said that they view a story to see what that person is currently doing. Another 58% of people said they view Instagram stories just to see authentic, raw content. So this allows you to be super creative because it's raw, it's on the spot, it's authentic, but it also allows you to do it with ease because it's not going to take long just to take a picture or film what's happening right in front of you. Unlike the feed where it is a little bit more professional, you have to think quite a bit about the copy underneath as well. So stories are fantastic. It gives you that opportunity to engage your fan base further and prove that your account is actually active so people want to follow it. But what can you post? I think that's probably the main issue for a lot of you. You've got this idea of what you want to post, but how do you do it so that it looks good? How do you do it so people want to interact with it? How do you do it so people keep coming back for more? Because those little icons at the top which show the stories, they're not just randomly picked. They're based on an algorithm. If people are engaging with you on the feed and they're also interacting with you on stories, so replying, sharing, reacting to it as well, Instagram is going to put you at the front of their list. They're going to see that people are viewing it all the way through, they're not skipping, they're not exiting, and they're going to think that you have good quality content. So the key thing here is that that content is going to keep people. It's going to keep them engaged, they're going to interact with it further, and then you'll be right at the front and you'll be getting all the views you want. Also, what helps with this is posting as often as possible. We do suggest that you post at least one story every single day, because if you're putting that high quality content out there, people will return and those views will go up. I'm going to jump straight in, talk about what sort of content you can be putting on your Instagram stories as an artist. And the final tips I'm going to be speaking about is something that actually I've been experimenting myself with quite a bit. I've been using this tip that I've learned from a lot of YouTube videos, and since doing it in the last week, my Instagram story views have gone up by 30%. Even though my following isn't humongous, I used it as a test and the results were amazing. So make sure to stick around for that one because there's proof it works. Before doing anything else, make sure that your account is either a business account or a creator account. The creator account is fairly new and it means that you can actually look at the data a little bit more specifically. So pick the one that you think is relevant to you and go with that. The reason this is so important is because obviously you can run ads, and if you follow our channel, you know that we push ads massively. It's an amazing way to grow your audience, but it also means that you can look at the insights. You can see how your story is doing, which you can't see if you're not a business or creator account. You'll be able to see how many views it's getting. You'll be able to see how many people have replied, how many people have shared it. There's so much stats on there. And the reason this is so important because you can see what stories are working. If certain stories mean people are exiting more, then that story style isn't right for you. So firstly, you need to find a theme. If you don't have a theme on your feed, then you need to go straight back to the drawing board because you can't even start to think about your story content until you've nailed the feed. When you follow someone, you follow them for a reason. They are either entertaining you, or they're educating you, or they're giving you something behind the scenes. If you don't have that ongoing theme, you can't really even think about what you're going to post on your story. So the easiest way to come up with that theme is to sit down and think, what is my message? What is my values? How do I want to communicate that with my audience? One example I love, because I'm a huge fan of this artist and he is growing at such a rapid rate, is Youngblood. Youngblood has a very strong message. His message is that everyone should feel like they can be themselves, no matter what their gender, their race, their sexuality. He has created this community and his social media pushes this even further. His anti-hate loving community are so engaged on Instagram because if you go to his posts, they're all talking about that message. If you go to his stories, yes, it's about that message, but it's also the behind the scenes of Youngblood. And he's created such a dedicated fan base that they want to see what the leader of this community is doing every single day. So that's the key thing here. What's your truth? What's your message? What's your values? And how are you going to put that out through your feed and your story content? Once you've got that in your head, that's when you can start thinking about the stories. Obvious things, you're going to take vertical pictures. I don't actually think it's that obvious because I'm seeing a lot of artists take pictures that are meant to be on the feed and putting it on their story. it doesn't suit the format of a story. It doesn't look right. And also it sometimes looks like an ad, because often if a post is actually boosted or someone's running an ad on it, it will also show up on the story. So people are more likely to exit or just not engage with it. So make sure everything is shot vertically. Also remember that at the beginning of this video I mentioned 58% of people engage with stories because it's authentic, it's raw. So don't worry too much about the quality of it. You want it to be shot on your iPhone. You want it to be shot not high quality with a camera. Don't be afraid to just pick up your phone and start recording something. And at the end of the day, it's only up for 24 hours. So if you feel it didn't do that well or you weren't that happy with it, it's gone in 24 hours, unlike the feed, which stays there like an online portfolio. The feed is like an EPK, people are gonna come check it out, but your stories, they're gone soon. So don't overthink it. Remember, just because you think your life is boring doesn't mean that your audience do. So start to show the ins and outs of what your life is like as an artist. And you can do all of this while using Instagram's features. They have features which are basically made for artists. You've got Q&A, you've got polls, you've got sliders, you've got countdowns, you've got chats, and more recently, you've got the effects. I think the 3 top ones for artists are the effects, the Q&A, and the polls. Q&A is pretty simple. You can respond to your fans. They can literally ask you a question and you respond. This is fantastic for your audience because they can actually feel like they're personally talking to you. The polls is also great because you can get your audience involved in the creation of your music, your live events. You can ask them simple questions about your studio. It's the behind the scenes whilst making them feel more involved. And finally, you've got effects. Stories allow you to be funny, and these effects that they've recently brought in are quite similar to Snapchat. And if you're quite happy being funny, that's part of your brand, then these effects are fantastic. It also makes you come across as human. People like to relate to someone, and if you're more real, your audience is going to love that. Now finally, let's move on to the thing that I've been doing that's meant that my stories have grown by 30%. And all this is making sure the aesthetic is better. Really, really simple things which you can do in the app. You don't need to download any other apps. And for this, I'm gonna need my phone. So have you ever posted a picture and thought, this looks a bit boring, or I don't really know what to do with this? These are a few things that you can actually do in the app with the pens, the rubber, just simply typing. Really, really simple things, but they can make your pictures look so much more aesthetically pleasing. People are more likely to view them again because there's actually something happening in that picture. So let me show you. So I'm just going to open up the app. From here, I'm going to pick my picture and just write one singular word. From here, you can actually layer the text. So you put it straight over the top of the text and then you pick a color. You layer it, it makes it look a little bit more interesting. From here, use a different font to go underneath. It's important to use a different font just because it adds something a little bit different. It means people can see a little bit more. It's just aesthetically pleasing. Pretty simple. I always suggest using the same colors as the colors that are in the image. And then behind that text, I'm going to use a simple highlight, which is also matching the color. This means that you can see the text behind it, which can sometimes be an issue on stories because if you can't see the text, people aren't going to really engage. They want to know what you're actually saying. So quickly put a color behind it using the highlighter pen. People can read it a lot more. Next up, I'm going to use something called the block feature. I always put a filter on my pictures just to have that same theme going on throughout. I always use Melbourne. From here, I'm just going to write the letter I. Make it big and then you can play around with it a bit. I make sure to match the color that's actually in the picture. And then underneath, I'm also going to put another block made out of the I. It can actually be really hard to kind of play around with stuff because it gets lost behind the block, etc. But once you've got it sorted, it's pretty easy to do. Next up, I'm going to try something where I separate the words slightly. So you pick your picture, put my filter on, and then choose some text to go over the top. I'm again going to use 2 different fonts just to make it look a little more interesting. And then I'm going to write out a word, but I'm going to write it out letter by letter, putting it in the font strong, and then putting a color kind of behind it. From here, you can play around with the word, put it kind of all over the place just to add a little bit of difference to the picture. This looks so much more interesting than just writing all of the text in one line or all of the text in one font. Also, again, I'm matching the colors of what's in the picture. For this one, I'm going to actually be using a little stylus that I have coming with my phone because I've got an Android. You can buy these online or you can choose your finger. But what I'm going to do is use the highlight pen to go around the object. And then from here, I'm just going to write a word a few times to put along the bottom. And then going to use the pen once again just to put dots in between the words. Super simple one for this, but it makes the picture just pop a little bit more, makes the main object kind of jump out in the photo. Again, you don't need to use the stylus, but if you do have a stylus, it can make it slightly easier because you have more control over it. This one is taking advantage of the lines, they're just using typewriter, and you just have to put underscores loads and loads and loads and loads and then kind of pull it apart. Pretty simple to do, but this adds so much more to the photo. So for this one, I'm doing a to-do list. You can do whatever you wish with this. You can just put borders on things, but a to-do list can look a little bit more interesting, give people an update on your day as an artist. Just putting brackets here will make the boxes for the to-do list. You can then use the pen to tick off the things that you've done, and now people will have a better understanding of what you've done with your day. Simple picture, this one, a little bit boring if you just posted it on your story. However, we're going to write filming across it 3 times. I really like that feature. I think it just makes it more interesting than just writing it once. And then you're going to use the highlighter pen. I used white to match the text, and then you're just going to doodle all over the picture. Looks a bit stupid at first, but then you're going to get your rubber out to rub out along the main object. From here, that doodle looks like it's kind of going around the object. It looks like it's a bit more 3D. The final one is using the eraser tool once again. So you're going to get your picture, and then you're going to write out a word which you think represents the image. So for this one, I'm just going to write work because I was working at the time. Use the highlighter one once again in white. You might have to play around with the sizing of it. And then from here, you're going to get the eraser, and you're just going to erase right through the center. And then you're going to write that word out multiple times, or you could even write the location, or write whatever you wish. Play around with the font and put it straight in the center. This one is so easy, but it makes a picture look so much more aesthetically pleasing. And it also means that you can write what you're doing without just having to write one singular word. So you could write studio, or you could write tour, whatever you wish. As I said, those are just from my personal account, nothing to do with music, but you can do them all to fit with your theme and fit with you being an artist. So for all of those, you could be doing in the studio, you could be doing while you're on tour. You could be doing behind the scenes of creating a music video. Or if you just play in your bedroom, that's content in itself. There is content to be made out of absolutely everything. And that last tip there, kind of going through the app features, means that you can just make it look that little bit more aesthetically pleasing whilst also being raw. All of these tips today should help you get more engagement on your stories, show something a little bit more to your audience. But remember, the whole time it needs to fit with your theme, with your messaging. Because if it doesn't, you're actually gonna lose engagement because people followed you for a certain reason. I hope you found this video useful, and if you did, hit that like button. If you haven't joined the community yet, make sure to hit subscribe, turn on the bell so you're notified when we upload, and I'll see you soon with more music marketing advice.
Well, I don't fear them all. I've never been afraid.